My name is John Hunt. I am one of Cornwall wildlife community speakers. Um, I've always had a great interest in nature and wildlife of all types. Um, I sailed just a little bit of background to myself, really, so you know who you're talking to. I sailed across the Atlantic in 2016 in a sailing race called the Ark as the boat medic. So when Julia said that a minute can seem like a long time, that's very, very true. As the boat medic, on many occasions when I was manning ambulances in Surrey back in the day, and you were waiting for support, a minute can feel like a very, very long time. So I sailed across the Atlantic back in 2016 as the boat medic. Um, I was able to do that because I'd been a volunteer with the British Red Cross for as a qualified ambulance technician for a very long time. I was also a trainer and assessor for first aid and ambulance aid. So I did a lot of work with the Red Cross for a very long time. My wife and I visit Costa Rica every year, where we're helping very, very good friends of ours who are rewilding part of the jungle down on the Pacific coast and also building a home there at the same time. And we've been doing that now for about 4 years, and we're now just about to come to the end of the project. The project will, the house will be ready probably in September, and the rewilding project will be finishing at a very similar time. The project's gone really, really well. We've encouraged all sorts of new animals and insects and wildlife to the site. It's just amazing what has happened there. So it's been a fantastic thing that we've been doing down in Costa Rica as well. So as I've just said to Julia, we bought a caravan about 4 years ago now down near Goonavon, which is near Perranporth. And the reason we did that really was that when I was younger, I used to spend a lot of time in Cornwall with my family. And then when I met Alison and we had our own family, she also spent a lot of time in Cornwall as a youngster. And then when we had our three children, we then spent a lot of time in Cornwall. So when we bought the caravan down in Cornwall, we decided that I wanted to try and put something back into Cornwall for all the fantastic times and stuff that Cornwall had and experiences Cornwall had given me, really. What I want to do is to try and encourage interest and involvement in the many projects that Cornwall Wildlife Trust, and if I can't do that, at least to try and generate some interest in the wildlife and the problems that the wildlife have, not only in Cornwall, but throughout the whole country and indeed the world. So, can I get rid of this? Let me just see if I can shift it. I'll put it down there. In 1912, the person who is probably best known as a banker, but he was also an expert naturalist, Charles Rothschild, formed a society for the promotion of nature restoration, and which was the forerunner to the Wildlife Trust. The first independent trust was in Norfolk and was formed in 1926, and today there are 46 individual wildlife trusts throughout the country. Cornwall Wildlife Trust being one of them. And there are 2,300 nature reserves that the wildlife trusts, like Cornwall, have responsibility for and run on everybody's behalf. Anybody know what this bird is?
Yeah.
You do. What is it?
A chough.
It's a chough. Fantastic. Yes. Some of this information I think is a little bit out of date now. The chough is still a very rare bird, and as I say, we're very lucky to have this bird in Cornwall. There was a gap of 28 years when this bird was not seen in Cornwall, but to my absolute joy, normally they're seen around the Lizard and Land's End. To my absolute joy, when I was out for a walk with my wife and dog, we actually saw 2 or 3 choughs near Polyjoke Beach, which is towards Truro. So they do seem now to be spreading out across the county, which is fantastic news, because there was quite a large gap when they weren't seen. It is surprising. The reason I asked the question, it's surprising how many birds people don't know what that bird is. And as it's the sort of national bird of Cornwall, I think it's even on the Cornwall coat of arms, isn't it? Yes.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
So Cornwall, as we all know, is a very special place. I believe that it's very, very special place. It's got over 400 miles of coastline. It's home to England's only resident pod of bottlenose dolphins. Nowhere else in the country will you see them. Internationally important heathlands and sand dunes, home to many rare and endangered species, including butterflies, bats, sharks, grey seals, hedgehogs, and much more. You cannot believe my joy when I first came to Cornwall when we bought this caravan. I hadn't seen a hedgehog for maybe, I don't know, 20, 30 years or more, maybe even. And I think within the first week of being in Cornwall and at our caravan down here, we were seeing hedgehogs. And it was such a delight because they are not all over the country. So it's a great joy to see them here in Cornwall, that's for sure. But unfortunately, nature, as it is all over the world, not just Cornwall, is in a lot of trouble, really. Nearly half of the terrestrial mammals are found in fewer places now, just like the hedgehog. He's not found throughout the whole country anymore. Climate change is having a dramatic effect on sea temperatures, the weather. The weather is unbelievably brilliant here at the moment. I think that 1% C has already been surpassed, and I think it's up to about 1.5 now. And shamefully, not for the people of Cornwall themselves, but shamefully, people who come to Cornwall seem to think that they can just dispose of their rubbish willy-nilly, which is really shameful. And 80,000 kilos of rubbish was picked up from Cornish beaches back in 2019, which is an appalling figure. It really shouldn't happen. We need to protect more of the seabed and so on, because we really don't protect enough. 12% of all remaining species are in direct threat of extinction in Cornwall, i.e., just as the chough was, we will lose them in Cornwall. They will disappear. With almost 25% of all terrestrial mammals and butterfly species at risk. We have right out, I can see it from here, a massive buddleia tree. And the butterflies love it. We see so many butterflies on it, but generally speaking, butterflies are at serious risk. So nature is in trouble. Since the 1970s, we've lost here 21 different types of breeding birds. We've lost 4 vascular plants. We've lost 8 bumblebees have gone extinct in Cornwall, which is appalling. These figures are shocking and really shouldn't be happening. If, incidentally, you have any questions that you want to ask, it's far better that you ask them. I can see some of you writing down things. That's great. But if you have a question, do ask the question as we're going along if you want to, or indeed at the end if you feel happier doing it that way. So there is a global decline in biodiversity, and that's a big problem. It's being caused by intensive farm, habitat loss, fragmentation, and all sorts of other reasons like climate change and so on. One of the most dramatic things that you see, unfortunately, is that insect numbers are down dramatically, and that can have a huge effect on wildlife. Birds obviously eat these insects. All sorts of predators eat them. And conservation, there's a charity called Bugs Life that worked with Kent Wildlife, and they asked members of the public to count the number of insect splats on their vehicle number plates. And then they can then compare it to a similar study done in 2004. They found that the insect numbers were down 73%, which is that's just a staggering figure. 76% in Scotland. I can't see these figures as they flash up and I can't remember them. Northern Ireland, 54, 79% in Wales. It's just really appalling figures. 73 studies throughout Europe and North America suggest that the rate of local decline in all right across those areas is that insects are declining at about 2.5% per year. That is an appalling number, because you can see lots of things eat these insects. They pollinate, they do all sorts of wonderful things for us, and yet we seem to be losing them quite dramatically. So the causes of these declines, and I know I sound very pessimistic at the moment, but there are good things being done, trust me. The cause of these declines is much debated, including habitat loss, pesticides, climate change, and so on. There is another survey taking place at the moment, which is currently underway, and we'll wait to see whether those insect figures have improved. I have a suspicion that they may have. When I came down this time, I had a sparkly car, and when I arrived, my number plate was fairly splattered with insects, unfortunately. So I'm quite optimistic that may have, or we may have already turned that corner. So this is where Cornwall Wildlife Trust come in, really, about to try and stem this all that we've been talking about. We were established in 1962 to help protect Cornwall's wildlife, its wild places on the land and in the sea. And for some reason, we are only concerned within Cornwall Wildlife Trust with things that happen in Cornwall. That's not to say that we don't discuss things with Devon or Surrey Wildlife Trust or all the other wildlife trusts, and they come together under the banner of the Wildlife Trust. But our main concern is Cornwall and what happens and is happening within that area. So we do conservation work on the land, we do conservation work at sea, and we look after the nature reserves that we have within our county. To do those things, we need volunteers. The whole thing works, as I'm sure you ladies understand, works on volunteers nowadays. When I was with the Red Cross, the whole British Red Cross ran on volunteers virtually. The nature reserves that we look after comprise of 5,500 acres of land. So that's a lot of land within Cornwall. And that is made up from 59 nature reserves. The first reserve that was opened was at Hawkswood in Wadebridge. I haven't been to that particular one, but that was the first one. And our nature reserves support all sorts of diverse habitats. They're not one particular type. Some of them are wetlands, some of them are forests, some of them are woodland, and all sorts of different things. And they are a haven for the rarest and most endangered species in the country, not only in the county, but also in the country. So we have a wide range of reserves across the county. There are still, however, 12,000 threatened species across more than of that 5,500 acres. There are still 1,200 threatened species within those areas. These reserves help to capture that nasty thing, carbon. They, on occasion, can help to prevent flooding. And if you go out into the countryside, I'm sure you would all agree that it makes you feel very much better. You know, well-being is a people sort of poo-poo it, but it's a really very important thing. And you definitely feel better when you go out and you have a nice long walk with your partner, your dog, or whatever, friends, and so on. So we have ancient woodlands. To be an ancient woodland, that land has to have had woods on it for at least 400 years. So we have ancient woodland, which is a fantastic thing to have. We have wetlands, which are great areas for carbon capture, for wading birds, for insects, for all sorts of wildlife are attracted to that water. The sand dunes, whilst we all enjoy the sand dunes and the dogs run around in them, not that I would necessarily agree with that, but nevertheless they do, and people enjoy the sand dunes. But the sand dunes need our help, and we have been doing a lot of work with sand dunes because they've become compacted, so they're not working in the way that they would normally work. So Cornwall Wildlife Trust are doing a lot of work with sand dunes, and we have a big thing going on with temperate rainforests at the moment. Now, most people would never have guessed that we'd even have temperate rainforests in this country, but we do. There's a section that I'll talk to you about it in a second. So we have a wide range of different types of environment across those reserves. We are focusing on restoring a lot of those reserves. A lot of work is going on at the moment at Helmand Tor in Bodmin Moor to restore that habitat, and animals that would have normally been there many years ago, like pigs, wild pigs, and so on, and ponies and long-haul cattle, are being slowly reintroduced back into that area so that they can rewild that area naturally, so that it will slowly return back to what it was in the first place. We're trying to create wildlife corridor links. One of the worst things that can happen with wildlife is that wildlife can become isolated. This is what we find is happening in certain areas within Costa Rica, where we go every year, is that a lot of the wildlife can get cut off from other groups of the same species. And if that group becomes isolated, it will inevitably fall away. So we're trying to create those links because those links will help to maintain the species population and the spread throughout the whole of the countryside. We need to prevent those, what they call islands of biodiversity. So it looks great, but half a mile that way and there's nowhere near the same amount. So we're trying to create a place where nature can thrive, basically. That's the aim. This is a map of temperate rainforest, and you can see the very, very little temperate rainforest in the world, very little left. Used to be covered in temperate rainforest, now not so much. So that's the global distribution. The climatic conditions required for rainforests occur only at about 1% of the whole planet. So we're incredibly lucky that in Cornwall we actually have temperate rainforest. That is what you would expect to see from in a temperate rainforest. Wet, very moist area, lots of moss, trees, lichen, all that sort of habitat, which is brilliant. And these areas are found in areas which are subject to the influence of the sea, because the sea keeps it wet and damp and moist and so on. These places have high rainfall and humidity and a low annual variation in the temperature. So there's a constant there. In the UK, in this unique habitat of ancient oak, birch, ash, pine, hazel woodland, is really brilliant. We also have these open glades and boulders and crags and rivers, and it's just the most incredible habitat. They don't even have this temperate rainforest in Costa Rica, so we're very lucky to get it here. We have a different sort of forest in Costa Rica. So rainforests are one of the most biodiverse places in the UK. We were very lucky that back in the 2000, I always get this one, can anybody say that? Muchlarkin Farm.
Muchlarnick.
That's it. Muchlarnick in Looe was gifted in a will to Cornwall Wildlife Trust, which was an incredible thing to do. About 8.4% of that 150 acre site is temperate rainforest. The trust by 2074 would like to increase that figure up to 87.2%. So it's a massive undertaking that's going on there. We want to try and restore the habitat that's been lost and protect all the insects and flora and fauna, and also help the carbon capture thing again, which is really very important. So there's a film now. Hopefully this film will work.
Temperate rainforests are a globally rare habitat, covering less than 1% of the Earth's surface. And with your support and help, we can restore them and bring them back. I think most people think of rainforest as an exotic, tropical habitat on the other side of the world. But long ago, Cornwall would have had lots of rainforest. Temperate rainforests grow on the western side of the UK, and it's a strong influence of the oceanic climate. There are only small fragmented patches left, so it's a very threatened habitat. Cornwall Wildlife Trust was gifted West Muchlanik Farm 20 years ago. It was left to us in a will. What an amazing legacy. Our aim is to connect up land around this reserve, planting native trees, encouraging natural regeneration, creating a much bigger area of temperate rainforest that will support amazing wildlife and bring back this fantastic ecosystem. Yeah, so we're just down the road from West Muchlanik Farm, but if you try to leap forward in 50 years' time, you know, this is what it could look like. It's damp, it's wet, it's moist, there's lots of mosses, lichen, ferns. So this is the type of habitat we'll be starting to create at West Muchlanik Farm. Ultimately, we'll be creating a lovely mosaic of natural regeneration and areas that are planted. To achieve the UK's net zero ambition, it is estimated that woodland cover needs to increase from 13% to 17% by 2050. Your support will allow us to restore lost temperate rainforest in deepest Cornwall. This appeal is really about stepping up the work that we can do for this amazing habitat in Cornwall. Your donation will make such a difference, and what an amazing thing to be involved in. Come back in 50 years' time. Some of you are lucky enough to be here in 50 years' time. You will see the impacts of that work and the amazing biodiversity that thrives in this incredible habitat. Thank you.
So we also have a very big project. This is probably the biggest project that we currently have on apart from the temperate rainforest. It's called Tor to Shore, and is one of the UK's most ambitious projects in reality, as far as rewilding and so on, as far as the Wildlife Trust is concerned. Cornwall Wildlife Trust were awarded £265,000 from the National Lottery, which was a great development grant that was given to us, which in itself is a huge responsibility to make sure that that money is spent wisely and in the correct way. So Tor to Shore is a highly ambitious project to try and restore the wildlife in mid Cornwall on both land and sea, and to have a corridor running all the way through so that it's all connected again. So it's all about connectivity. And to do that, we're engaging all the local communities along that way about the wildlife and the way in which we want to try and do it, and the natural world, so that we want to bring those people with us. Obviously, to do that, we need to speak to the farmers, and Cornwall Wildlife Trust has always spoken to farmers very well. We have a good relationship with the farmers within Cornwall, and we're working very hard with them to try and create these corridors so that the animals can all move around the county properly. So that nature, as we said, what we don't want is for that nature to exist in little pockets of isolated biodiversity and then nothing else, as it were. So we're going to try and move it all together, connect it all up. So Tor to Shore will create a local nature recovery network spanning right away across the land and sea. It'll be the first of its kind in the UK, bringing together rewilding principles, sustainable farming practice, and marine conservation activities, and bringing the community with us, as it were. So it's a really very, very important, very big project that's going on. And we definitely need we need volunteers, and we need people to donate money in order that that project can go forward. We're also very lucky in Cornwall now to have beavers. Beavers are back in Cornwall. Has anybody been to see the beavers at Woodland Farm at Laddock? You have. Did you actually see them?
No, it was they were all tucked up in bed.
Tucked up in bed, yeah, which is on occasion in Cornwall's the best place to be.
Yeah.
But we're very lucky in Cornwall. I mean, they were extinct for over 400 years. Nowadays, of course, they are different counties and wildlife trusts and various places are releasing badgers into the community in a controlled fashion. Some people have taken it into their heads to not do it in a controlled way, which is completely the wrong way to do it. What we need to do is make sure that the community, the farmers, everybody know exactly what's going on and that these things are done properly. But nevertheless, it is good that beavers are returning to Cornwall. They are at Woodland Valley Farm at Laddock. I've tried several times to get to see them, but they're so busy down there. Getting onto one of the visits there is very difficult. So we have a film which I'd like to show you now.
Having the beavers has been an absolute delight because they're constantly working, either building a dam or cutting down a tree or building a lodge. There's always something going on, and you know, any day of the week you can come down and it's a little bit different from the day before. The ability to be out in nature, it's always important, but it seems more important today. You know, regardless of whether we're stuck in town or stuck out here, there are a lot of uncertainties at the moment. So being able to be here and really just lose yourself in nature is a wonderful sort of healing balm, really. The day the beavers were released here was a really, really wonderful day. Seeing these animals back in this habitat for the first time in probably 1,000 years, back into a habitat that they really should be in, was just magical. We got round to May and we thought, oh, perhaps there'll be some youngsters soon, and nothing. They'd built a nice lodge on the island, and then we came round to June, and lo and behold, there was a tiny, tiny beaver in the water. And then the next night, we had two. It was just wonderful. The beavers really are the quintessential engineers of nature. They change the way our river valleys work and function. They bring back ecological integrity. This has a whole range of interesting side effects. One is, in a period of drought, you get a lot more water left, so fish and birds and other wildlife actually thrive better. One of the really, really big things is when we have periods of very, very wet weather, they hold a lot more water up here in the land before it gets somewhere where it can flood. While we've had to really slow down and step back from our normal busy lives, it's been much more noticeable that nature just cracks on. You know, whatever's going on, nature's there doing its thing. And with the beavers in particular, it's really life-affirming to see them just getting on with things. And you know that things are changing here, and the whole time changing for the better. You know, we are a fundamental part of nature ourselves, and I'm really hoping that this crisis is going to show us that we need to have a much, much closer affinity with nature and learn to live with it and help it as much as possible, because, you know, if nature isn't thriving, then neither are we.
So, a great project. That guy is the owner of the land. I can never remember his name. No, it's gone again. Every single time I forget his name, I'm afraid. So we're also concerned with marine conservation. It's all the marine side is sometimes forgotten by a lot of people because we very rarely go swimming around under the sea, but so we don't, it's sort of not foremost in our minds on occasions. Cornwall Wildlife Trust has an unbelievably good marine conservation side. It's world renowned. We have loads of extremely talented and very, very knowledgeable people within Cornwall Wildlife Trust on the marine conservation side. And one of the things that we are currently doing, I mean, we have seagrass in Cornwall. Lots of people don't realise that we have seagrass in Cornwall. We actually have seagrass in Cornwall. Seagrass is one of the great vacuums of carbon. So it's a great thing to have, and takes up an awful lot of carbon. It has suffered declines in the UK, but there are still good patches off Falmouth, Mounts Bay, and we have another project going on at the moment. So we launched a project back in 2022 with Sea Salt Cornwall to restore the seagrass in the Fowl estuary, which is going extremely well. So that's a great project that's been going on there. Seagrass is really important because it gives shelter to newly hatched fish and all sorts of things. And of course, the carbon capture side is really important. We're quite strong on this side. Your Shore is an organisation within a group, as it were, within Cornwall, who are specially trained volunteers protecting the coast for now and the future generations. They run surveys, beach cleans, and they're always there trying to help to protect our seas for the future. So they're a great group. If you go to the site, you can find them. If you want to get involved in the Your Shore group, they're there to be joined. They would welcome you with open arms. They're always looking for new people, and it can be great fun and a really great day out to do some of the things that they get involved with. The Marine Strandings Network is another really great organization working with Cornwall Wildlife, or within Cornwall Wildlife Trust. And they monitor stranded and deceased marine wildlife across Cornwall and the Isles of Scilly. And they've been doing that for 20 years or so. And they have about 150 volunteers. Again, they would, if you want to become involved with the marine strandings section, you can do that via the site. That's really brilliant. There lots of things that you can do there, but this one is a really interesting project. Seaquest Southwest is a group that trying to understand and conserve, protect the marine life that is currently there through data collection. So it's very important about live sightings. So you may well see some of their people sitting on cliffs with binoculars looking to see if they can see whales or dolphins or whatever else there is, the seabirds and so on. So again, a very good fun thing to do as well. Shore search is a really good one because with the kids can get involved with this one because they go around recording what animals have been left in rock pools and they record them and do all sorts of things with those. So that's a really good one as well. Like I said, we do work very closely with farmers. As you all know, Cornwall is very agricultural. Everywhere you look, there's farms and open spaces. Unfortunately, there has been a decline in some of those farmland birds. That is now, I think they're beginning to turn the corner on that now, because they now have a greater understanding as to if they can hold off cutting, or they give wider margins at the edges of fields, or they plant wild flower meadows and so on. But there has been a dramatic decline. I mean, in this area where I am here, I see a reasonable number. I would only say a reasonable number, but it is a reasonable number of skylarks. The skylarks are in real trouble in parts of the country. You just do not see skylarks. So we're working very hard with the farmers to try and put these things right, and they are really enthusiastic that they want to be involved, and because they know how important it actually is. So wildlife friendly farming is very beneficial to wildlife and nature, and in fact to agricultural output because of the pollination and so on. Most of us have bits of garden at home. In Surrey, we're very lucky to have a reasonable sized garden. But even if you've only got a few flower pots that you can put plants into, is really important, because all these little bits, they all add up into a huge thing. So wildlife friendly gardens are very important. They contribute to conservation because they provide food, shelter, habitat, and so on for butterflies, for insects, for all sorts of hedgehogs, and so on. And even if you've only got a balcony that you can put a pot on or something, it's definitely worth doing. There is an awful lot about wildlife gardening on the Cornwall Wildlife site. If you go to the site, there's masses of help around the sorts of things that you can plant that are useful to pollinators and so on. These are just a few of the plants that you could: foxgloves, hawthorn, hebe, borage, poppies, forget-me-nots, lavender, marigold. I said to you that we have these massive buddleia bushes here, and they're fantastic. So there are lots of things that you can do. Lots of people say, yeah, but what can I do about it? Well, I think that the first thing you can do is you can look to what you can personally do as far as your own environment, your garden, and so on. And second, you can volunteer to help Cornwall Life Trust do the bigger projects, the things that we really need them to do, which we're not able to do as an individual, but we can do as a big organization with the help of volunteers. So you can see the sort of things. If you go to Cornwall Wildlife Trust, that's a page from there, and you go to the actions page, you can see it shows you, and in really very good detail, simple things like how to plant a tree, how to provide water for wildlife, how to build a bat box, how to attract bumblebees to your garden, or how to conserve all sorts of things, things that you would never have thought of. The website for Cornwall Wildlife Trust is an incredible resource that you should really try and use. So I have another video which I'd like to show you. So I'll let you watch this one, I think.
Another journey around the sun. It wasn't without its challenges. From cairn to coast, you were never far away. Through icy winter cold, you made sure wildlife had a stronghold. At sea, on sand, all across the homeland, you worked hard to keep them safe. You dug, you cleared, you planted. With your efforts, new life flourished. You mapped and revealed treasures. In towns, in gardens, you came together and campaigned, stood up, reclaimed. Things got hot as life blazed across the duchy. And seeds of change planted in colder times bloomed. You watched, you listed, sands shifted, and you persisted. To take part, to play a part, to rebuild and to restore. As the Atlantic brought spectacular visitors, you celebrated what sets us apart. In these strange winds of change, you are my hope. You are the heart. Despite darker days, you are still giving. For all that you do, thank you.
I have to do my little workaround because these films, for some reason, where am I? So you can see that Cornwall Wildlife really does do a huge amount of work within Cornwall. It's absolutely massive, but we are really very, very dependent upon the goodwill of people through donation or volunteering and so on. There are various ways in which you can do that. You can make a regular donation by becoming a member. Membership, I think as low as £2, £2.50. It's very, very cheap to do. It's not an expensive thing, and you get a regular magazine and updates about things that are going on and what the trust is doing within Cornwall, and dates as to when you can go and do various projects and so on. So you can become a member. You can make a single donation. It is possible to direct that donation to a particular project. So if you are particularly interested in marine, for instance, you can direct that donation towards the marine projects. That, like I said, you can donate to a particular project. So I would say to you that there's a lot of work going on within Cornwall. I personally think that there is good cause to be optimistic about the work, certainly within Cornwall. And I know the same thing to be within Surrey. So I know a lot of really talented, hardworking people are working extremely hard, not only in this country, but all around the world, to make sure that we don't lose any more creatures and animals around the world than we already have, and to try and reintroduce those that we have already unfortunately lost in certain places. I know, for instance, through first-hand experience in Costa Rica, there was no water, no water on the land that we were rewilding there. So one of the first things that we did was that we built 2 ponds. The first one was, we call it small. It's actually a very, very big pond. It's probably, I don't know, 10 meters by maybe 8 meters. And literally within days, we were getting dragonflies and all sorts of stuff and birds visiting to drink and so on. We then built a small waterfall down into a much bigger pond. This pond is a big pond. It's probably, I don't know, 25 meters square, round, and as were. And we rewilded the land. We've taken a huge amount of fern, and we replanted, and we've been planting endangered trees, and we have endangered bees, stingless bees on the site that I look after when I'm there. And what we are seeing now, there are, I think, 5 big cats in Costa Rica, like the jaguar, the puma, and the margay and the ocelot. And we've actually seen 2 of those species on the land. They were never seen in that area before, never, ever seen in that area. So what we've done is that we've rewilded it, and animals that were there are coming back. So we're creating that corridor again, which is really important. We even saw, crossing the land, a boa constrictor of about 10 feet long. He was massive. Again, never, ever been seen. Never been seen. So people, not only in Cornwall Wildlife Trust, and there's lots of extremely talented people in Cornwall Wildlife Trust who are working incredibly hard to do that, but people around the world. So I think we have good cause to be optimistic about things that people are suddenly beginning to realize that it is really important that we pay attention, because if we don't, then I think we could all be in severe trouble. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed that presentation. It is only an overview of what Cornwall Wildlife Trust does. If you have any questions, I'm perfectly happy to take those now. I will stop sharing my screen now, which is amazing. Actually worked as well. And here I am. So if you have any questions, can you hear me?
Yes, we're all here. Just totally overwhelmed, to be honest. Such a good presentation.
Good. Well, I'm glad you enjoyed it.
That was brilliant, John. Absolutely brilliant. And what a deserving organisation you are. I just got one question. And as it happens, there was a chap, and I can't remember who it was, from the Wildlife Trust on Breakfast TV this morning. And he was particularly talking about the problems with the climate getting hotter and
Yes.
how important wildlife corridors are, so that, for example, the birds can reach areas that are less hot,
Sure.
sort of thing. But what I wondered was that obviously, and that's not just talking about birds moving from, you know, one locality to another. It's talking about quite significant moves. And is there a link? Is there much working together with the Cornwall Wildlife Trusts to do a sort of countrywide wildlife corridor sort of?
Yes, there are certainly we don't I know I said within the presentation that our focus is on Cornwall, which it is, but we work extremely closely with all organizations, the RSPB, National Trust, all the different organizations, and some of them incredible organizations. Cornwall Wildlife Trust are not alone in wanting to change the way in which we've been doing things, that we can't just continue to do what we're doing now, otherwise we're all going to be in an awful lot of trouble. And that's not just this country. I mean, I've got a lot of experience in Costa Rica, so I go back there. I mean, they've been very busily opening up corridors for exactly the same reason that you said, because what happens is that you get a pocket of biodiversity or even a particular species that are existent in one area only, and because of, like in Costa Rica, there's a particular species of capuchin monkey. Now we see capuchin monkeys where we are down on the Pacific coast, south on the Pacific coast, but we're only seeing a particular one, the white-faced capuchin. But there is another capuchin monkey much further up in the sort of central Costa Rica that has become isolated. So and you don't see it anywhere else. You just don't see it. I think you see a very small, again, isolated thing on the Caribbean side of Costa Rica. So they are desperately at the moment trying to open up corridors. They've become isolated because the Pan American Highway has gone straight through the middle, and they're not able to cross that huge motorway which cuts right the way up through South America, Central America, North, and goes all the way up. One continuous road. So there are organizations, there's lots of people. Cornwall Wildlife Trust is certainly in touch with other organizations to do. There is, I can't remember what the exact, where is it? There is a state of, I don't know if anybody can see this book. You can get this book. It's called the State of Nature. This one is 2020. This is a great thing because it talks to you about all sorts of overviews of what is going on and throughout the whole country. So yes is the answer to your question. We work extremely closely with other organizations, but our focus, as with all the other individual county trusts, is this is our area. We need to make sure that we are getting things right here, and then we can, and whilst at the same time talking to other groups, because obviously animals and birds and don't stay in one place. They do cross in, you know, and obviously the work that we are doing here in Cornwall can be transposed into other areas. So if it's working here, then we should be able to make it work somewhere else, hopefully. So I hope that answers the question.
Yeah, fantastic, fantastic.
I was just going to say, I like the way that you affirmed that individuals can actually make a difference, and making your gardens more wildlife friendly. In fact, it takes nothing really, does it? Just letting things grow. And the same that we say we can't do much, but like with our churches, I know Julie always says is like the small steps,
Yes,
getting a bird box, things like that.
very
It just
important.
needs the thought and the action.
Yeah,
And it's
yes, I get quite sort of, I don't know, emotional is not quite the right word, but I get slightly sort of, my grandchildren. I have three little girls as grandchildren, um, and they are what I would call well-rounded as far as nature is concerned. They are not frightened of spiders. They are not scared of snakes. However, they have a respect for them, but they are not frightened of them. And the number of times I did a talk here on this site here, which is quite a large site, because people were getting terribly worried about adders in the sand dunes and their dogs being bitten and so on. But they were getting to a state where you think, well, that's not. I mean, I understand people are scared of snakes. I mean, as it happens, I like snakes, but I have a great deal of respect for this. I don't go around messing with them or trying to pick them up or trying to harm them. I just think they're fantastic creatures, and we should leave them alone. They won't hurt you. They're not waiting for you to come along and just so that they can bite you, as it were. So I did the talk here, and many people came up to me afterwards and said, well, now I have a greater understanding of what those creatures are. So I think it's really important that if you don't have an understanding of nature, we're sort of doomed is probably not quite the right word, but if you don't understand something, then you can't. It's difficult to have empathy with it and want to help it and support it and make it flourish, if you know what I mean. So my three grandchildren, they know everything. That's, at least I hope they do. They don't know everything, but they know an awful lot more than other children of 8, 9 years old. Because you ask the average child what that bird was that I showed you, the chuff, not the faintest idea, not a clue. If you ask them, what's that black bird over there, they go, well, I don't know, it's just a bird. But if you show them a picture, as somebody coined once, of Beyonce or some reality star, they'll be able to answer you straight away. So we've got our priorities wrong, really, in my opinion. But I'm going off now. I'm beginning to rant, and I mustn't do that. But I do feel very strongly that we all need to encourage people to go out into nature, listen, look, and discover what is actually out there. I went across to our dog field on this site, and I know other people who go to dog fields. It's a lovely field, and they've left it completely uncut, and they've cut little furrows through the long grass, and you can walk. I went there with one of my apps that I have on my phone, and I recorded, just not really trying to find particularly, but just walking around, 23 different types of wildflower. Incredible, amazing. And some of these flowers, you think, well, that's incredible. I mean, I was at home, and at home they do this no mow May, where you don't cut the grass. Well, I cut a very small ribbon around so I can see when I come off my drive, so I can see the traffic. But I suddenly spotted something in the grass, and I went across, and it was a pyramidal orchid. A pyramidal orchid right in the middle of. That's incredible. So there are lots of things that we can all do, to get back to Rosie's initial observation. Lots of things we can do. Put out water for birds, put out seed, put out stuff for hedgehogs, put up a bat box, put up a bird box, do these things, because if we all do it, it's an incredible thing that we're doing. It makes a massive difference.
I think we all support that completely, don't we? Absolutely, absolutely brilliant. And you've given us so much fascinating information and tips on the sorts of things that we can do, as well as directing us to that brilliant website. I'm awfully sorry, but we're going to need to draw things to a conclusion now, because we're pretty well out of time. But to say, can I just say a huge thank you, John, on behalf of
Thank you.
all of us, for a really, really fascinating session this morning, which we really, really appreciate.
Good. Thank you very much indeed. Rosie, thank you very much indeed for helping.
No, it's our pleasure. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Guys, been very, very, very nice to meet you all. Thank you very much indeed for listening. And perhaps we can do this again another time.
Yeah, that will be really good. Thank you. Please do.
Thank you very much indeed. Thank you, everybody.
Take care.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye. 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 Rosie, do you want to
yeah, just
the notices?
Yeah, just there's not a lot of notices because we're coming into August, and that's a time for us to rest in theory, and also time to think about things in the future. And of course, we've got Creation Tide coming up. We've got our annual Creation Tide service, and this year it's going to be held on the 27th of September, and it's going to be at our Gold Eco Church Award church, which is at Braddock, which is quite close to Lostwithiel. It will be at 3:30 in the afternoon, and Bishop David will be leading the reflection. So there will be information going out on that. I know it's quite a long way for us to all go, but we're hoping to do car sharing, and it will be absolutely fantastic just to see that Gold Eco Church and the things that they've been doing. So do encourage you to get in touch and probably car share and go along. And maybe to think about your own Creation Care, Creation Tide service. There's a lot of information out there now. The Season of Creation, which is kind of like an ecumenical group, have produced lots of resources. It'll be in the newsletter. And their theme this year is Peace with Creation. And also the Church of England, they've got their own theme as well, is encouraging churches to switch to green energy, which I think probably quite a few of us have already done, which is very good, but certainly, you know, that's good to promote that. And also two nice things. There's some two exhibitions through sewing taking place. I don't know if any of you've heard of the one in the cathedral, which is called Threads Through Creation, and I can just quickly show you a picture. If I just show you one, share. Here we go, share. So there you can see one panel. I just whizzed into the cathedral yesterday. So this is Thread Through Creation. It's from the 8th of July to the 20th of August, and there are 12 huge panels of the book of Genesis. They're spectacular scenes, and they're all in silk by a lady called Jackie Parkinson. 8 million stitches. So if you're in town and if it's hot, good place to go into the cathedral to cool down and just to have a look at these beautiful panels. And there is also another exhibition, and that's happening in the Quaker House in Penzance, Marazion, and that is called Loving Earth, and it's like a fabric art exhibition on climate change, and that's open daily. And there was a flyer attached to the last updates, but that will be in the newsletter as well. So maybe people down the west might like to go and see that. Maybe if you're coming into town, come up or come down to see the cathedral. So I think that's basically it. And don't forget the big butterfly count.
That's it, brilliant. Thank you very much, Rosie. Well, it's been such an interesting meeting. Thank you all for coming and contributing. And really good speaker. Yeah, don't forget we haven't got a meeting next month. So our next meeting is Thursday, the 11th of September at 10 o'clock, when we'll have our new DEO, Sharon, with us, Sharon Willoughby. And let us close now with a short prayer taken again from our pilgrimage with Ellie last month. Creator God, Remind us to rejoice in all that is good and beautiful in your creation. Help us to value it and protect it as you call us to do. Focus our attention on the world as you intended, where we live in harmony with nature and with each other, in relationships guided by justice, mercy, and peace. Give us strength to speak up for your creation and to live lives that demonstrate your kingdom come. We ask this in the name of Jesus Christ, our Saviour. Amen.
Amen.
So, thank you for coming. Lovely to see you. Enjoy summer and look forward to catching up with you soon and to meeting lovely Sharon, which we'll do in 2 months' time.